From San Diego, California, this is a One Extraordinary Marriage show, where being busy is overdone, romancing is fun, and scheduling sex has taken the guesswork out of wondering when you're going to get some. I'm Tony DeLorenzo, your co-host, along with my beautiful wife, Elisa. From coast to coast and around the world, thank you for joining us. It's time to talk sex, love, and commitment. Give us a call on the HUG hotline at 858-876-5663 or send us an email to hugs@oneextraordinarymarriage.com. In today's show, we're talking about how you can overcome the biggest challenges to starting any sex challenge.
And there's a quote from Brian Tracy that says, treat objections as requests for further information. And as we're talking about the challenges around doing a sex challenge, most of the time, that's just a request for further information. So we're going to be digging into that in today's show. But we start each and every show here at One Extraordinary Marriage with a hug. And
That's right.
A hug's really that opportunity for you to hear from someone else in the one family and just the breakthrough that they've had in their marriage. And this week's hug is sponsored by the Position of the Month Club. And we're so looking forward to sharing more about this special group a little later in the show. The hug that came from an email, and it said, I started listening to your podcast several weeks ago, and I've been hooked ever since.
Right on.
Went on to say, my husband and I just completed the 7-day challenge, and we are so encouraged by the results. We've been wanting to make a change and improve both the quality and quantity of our sex life, so we were open to giving this challenge a try, and we're so glad we did. It's easy for us to make excuses about being too busy or too tired for sex, even though we know that physical intimacy is more important than anything else on our to-do list. That's like a serious insight right there.
Little knowledge bomb.
During the challenge, we discovered that even when we didn't feel up for sex, once we got going, we ended up having a great time and feeling so glad that we'd had sex. We also noticed a huge difference it makes in the effort that we're putting forth to please one another. Sex is starting to feel more fun again and less like a chore. Knowing that we were in this challenge together affected more than just our physical intimacy. Another insight there.
Yes.
We're actually going to be talking about that. She said, I noticed an increased emotional connection the whole day, not just the moments leading up to sex. My husband has started greeting me at my car door when I come home from work instead of barely acknowledging me as I walk inside while he's glued to his screen. This is just one example of the small gestures I've noticed this week that make me feel more connected. I've been more mindful of my words and actions too, thinking of things I can do for him to make him feel more loved and attracted to me and desiring intimacy as well. We don't want our progress to stop with the challenge, so we're going to try the intimacy lifestyle next.
Yes. I love it. That's an amazing hug, Anna. We did it.
Well,
Boom.
All wrapped into one. And the funny thing about this hug, or I guess the ironic thing, is that we had already planned on wrapping the show around the idea of, what are the challenges with a sex challenge? And no joke, we were getting ready to go and record the show, and that hug comes in, and just one of those divine moments where you're like, that hug came in because all of you, it just gets you thinking about what we're going to be talking about today.
That's right.
And, a couple of weeks ago, we released the second edition, fully revised and updated 7 Days of Sex Challenge book. First time we've updated it, I think, in 5 or 6 years.
We've only updated it other than the covers.
Right. It's had a number of different covers, but this is 50
to 60% brand new material in the 7 Days of Sex Challenge. So if you have the old one and you want something new, grab it. If you've never grabbed it, grab it. You can just pick it up at 7daysofsex.com.
And when the book came out and people were starting to pick it up, we started getting these questions about, when are we going to do the next 7 Days of Sex Challenge with the one family? And, it was something in the early years of One Extraordinary Marriage. I think we did it 2 or 3 years in a row.
Three
years in a row.
3 years in a row, way back when. Yeah.
Way back when one was much smaller. The one family was teeny tiny compared to all of you now. And it's one of those things, and you guys hear me say this almost every week, that when we want to know what's going on with the one family, we ask you.
That's right.
Right. It's a good model, just as a side note, it's a good model for communication in your marriage. If you want to know what's going on, ask the question.
True.
Don't assume, because quite honestly, we'd actually been making some assumptions about the one family and had you thought about sex challenges? We kind of had all these preconceived ideas because we talk about it a lot.
Yeah. And we would hear from couples, just like this hug and this, we did it. And we would get folks hitting us up on Facebook or Instagram, DMing us, emails, voicemails, whatever it may be. So we had our own perceived connotation or notion from what we've received.
Right. And so we asked you, right, have the two of you ever considered doing a sex challenge? right? Whether we're talking 7 days, Tony and I did 60 days years and years ago, have you ever considered? No stipulations on what that was. And we had over 500 responses to that one question. And 61% of you said, yes, we've thought about it.
Okay.
So the next logical question is, well, how many of you have completed
a challenge?
Right? So remember, 61% said we've thought about it. 14% of you have actually completed one.
Which is great.
Which is great for the 14% that have, but there's like 47%, there's a 47% gap there between those of you that have thought about it and actually completed one.
Yeah.
And so, it really got us thinking, okay, where's the gap, right? What's going on? And we also know that there are a lot of you that maybe you've heard us talk about the sex challenge, but you don't actually know our story. Partly because it's episode 1 of the podcast. And if you find us on iTunes, you only get the last 300. So
you know what I'll do though, is I'll put a link here in the show notes to episode 1.
Oh,
and awesome. you can just come back and listen to it. It's raw, it's real, it's way different than what we sound like now. Please extend some grace because we didn't know what we were really doing. But I will tell you, it's the origin story. It's where one started and where our lives got turned around.
And, keep in mind when you do listen that was 9 years ago.
Yes.
Like let me just, that us recording
Context.
that 9 years ago.
Yes. We've grown a lot.
But we did our first sex challenge in 2008. Right. And that was 60 days. And, just a little context of what was going on in case you've forgotten what was happening 10, 11 years ago. That was at the start of the recession. Right. So a lot of stress coming in. Tony's been self-employed since 2003. I think.
Sure. Sounds
right.
good.
2003. And so, 5 years into being self-employed at that point in time, high stress, things are going on. Our kids, little context, they were 2 and 5 when we decided to embark on a 60 days of sex challenge. So for all of you that are saying my kids are too little, I'm just letting you know we did it. And a little bit more to that is that we hadn't been having sex regularly, right? Like not even, I know you all hear us talk about the intimacy lifestyle. The intimacy lifestyle wasn't even a thing.
Yeah, that was born out of the 60 Days of Sex Challenge. I would say we were probably a 1 to 2 timer a month on sex at that point in time in our lives.
I feel like you're being generous.
Okay, well, I'm being generous. Take it.
But I'll take it.
All right.
And our communication was not good either.
No, not
right?
at all.
Like, in fact, when Tony first suggested it, I said no. And was just like, absolutely not. This is not going to happen. And
and on top of all that, 11 years married.
Yes.
So we were already 11 years into our marriage, and now we're double that. So we're 22.
So lots of bad habits, lots of rejection, lots of not talking about sex, lots of the things, differences in desire weigh a factor in our marriage. And ultimately we ended up completing 40 out of 60 days. And that's what launched what you all now know as One Extraordinary Marriage. And I will tell you that those 40 out of 60 days that we completed, it wasn't always easy.
No.
There wasn't always fireworks, right?
There are a lot of good fireworks, though. Not always. Yeah. I mean, when you're going 40 times out of 60, there were definitely days and moments where we had to, this is where the emotional intimacy came, and we're going to talk about it more, but we had to talk about those moments where we're just like, okay, we only have so much time right now. Let's move. And instead of just sort of beating around the bush, we just, okay, what does this look like for us? And we got down and dirty and talked about it.
And a few other things that didn't always happen. There wasn't always an orgasm. There wasn't
on both parts.
On both parts.
I'm going to say that there were many a times when I was like, we're going to have to go for penetration. I'm going to try my hardest personally as a guy. Yeah. I'm going to try my hardest to ejaculate. There were multiple times when I did not.
And that's, and there were late nights, early mornings, all different kinds of stuff. And that experience wrapped around those 2 months, that was priceless. But the reality is that most couples can't really mentally block off 60 days to commit to this. And we knew this as we started sharing our story with folks. People were like, wow, Taylor said, that's a lot of time. That's a significant 2 months. That's 1/6 of the year. That's a lot. And so we knew that we had to figure out a way that couples could have the same experience, have the connection, have the priority in their marriage, have all of these different components come together, but do it in a period of time that was smaller.
I think I wouldn't say smaller, but more manageable. Because ever since that first one, Elise and I have not since done another 60 days of sex challenge. We have, though, done a 7 days of sex challenge every year since. So we have done 9. This will be our 10th anniversary of coming up with a 7 days of sex challenge, or doing a 7 days of sex challenge each year. And it's amazing what happens in those 7 days. And I will say, having done both, there's a lot that we learn in 7 days that we learned when we did the 60 days.
Wow, I didn't realize this was the 10th anniversary.
The 10th anniversary, yeah.
Oh my gosh. But that's
good stuff.
That's where the idea of the 7 days of sex challenge came up. And, you know, a lot of people ask us, well, doesn't this change the focus in the marriage to sexual intimacy instead of having emotional intimacy? You know, aren't you just only focused on sex? And as you heard in that hug, right? I mean, here's a couple that 7 days and they're now like doing stuff for each other, and they're, you know.
Well, they're connecting emotionally as well as physically.
Well, and that's what I mean, doing, you know, he's greeting her at the door, right? Instead of looking at the screen. There's all of this that, yes, at first glance, it does look like it's all about sex. It's called a sex challenge, right? Like let's just, everybody, it's there. It's in the middle of the room. It's there. But what happens as you start to put one another, you start to make each other a priority, is that you start finding ways to emotionally connect.
That's right.
You start choosing your battles. Because let me tell you, ladies, and specifically, when we did the 60 days, Tony had been the one to traditionally take out the garbage, right? But I started realizing, I'm like, if I'm going to gripe about him taking out the garbage cans, that's just going to like drive a wedge into the day. Like, was it a battle I wanted to face, or could I just go and do it myself? Right? All of a sudden, remember those kids were little, Tony started, you know, helping out at bath time. Why? Because if I was less stressed at the end of the evening, it was a lot easier for me to transition into having sex.
And here's the thing, though, too. I think we get into our roles and our routines, right? And we see our marriage as husband and wife. And I have my role as a husband. Elisa has her roles as wife. And that had been going on. And so by putting in a challenge, it really disrupted that and made me personally realize that there were things that, wait a minute, I can do around here. I can help out. Why can't I? I'd almost box myself in to say, this is what I do in this relationship. And yet once I started realizing that, you know what, I can, there's no big deal. And let me just say this, my oldest is 16. I think there is even a gap between how dads and moms tend to their kids, even in the 16 years that we've had our first. Back then, even most of my buddies, we just were just like, it's cool. Wife's going to take care of the kids. And yet I did realize that it was really vital for me to do that. Hey, do the dishes, do the things like that. And those are things that I've realized even to this day have impacted our sexual and emotional intimacy. So it may be small. We may think it's small. And yet at the bigger, when you look at it over time, it really makes an impact.
Absolutely. Because, you know, as you start to do those things, as you start to have the conversations, right? And every time that we do a sex challenge, the quality of our conversations change. Right? How that happens. And so you remember why you fell in love in the first place. You rediscover who you are now and what works. And let me tell you something, you start looking at having sex 7 days in a row, and it actually gives you an opportunity to like fuel your creativity.
Sure thing.
Right? Because if you're looking at having sex in the exact same position at the exact same time for 7 days, there's not a lot of excitement that goes along with it.
That's where it's getting out of your comfort zone sexually. And so, yes, this is a sex challenge, because part of the thing is, let's change it up. And Elise and I learned that quickly, because when you do missionary style time and time again, you're like, hey, this works and it's a great position and we love it. And yet there's a little, we need to change this thing up a little bit for both of us.
And I know a lot of you are sitting there listening to us today and you're like, seriously, I don't even know why we have to have this conversation. If we're talking about, 7 days of sex challenge, it's pretty simple, right? Like, we're just going to have sex 7 days in a row. What's so hard about that? I will tell you, there are a lot of challenges to having sex 7 days in a row, right? Because here's the thing, it takes time, it takes connection, and there are all of these things that actually conspire against you to make your marriage and to make intimacy a priority. Yeah. And we asked the one family, what's your biggest obstacle? Or what do you think would be the biggest obstacle? And I'm telling you, I compiled all of the results, and it was it was almost overwhelming, right? To see how some of these things really impact the two of you. And we wanted to share with you the 4 biggest vote getters, right? Because I mean, the list, I think there was probably, 20 or 30 different options. Some of them definitely fell into categories, and those I condensed into the 4 biggest challenges. But here's the thing. Take that step. And if there's one thing I can tell you before we even get into this, is that it's a success when you even attempt the challenge. You have no idea what's going to happen in any given 7-day period in your life, right? Kids get sick. We had illness when we did the 60 days. People get called out of town of work. Don't view not completing as a failure. Like, can I just say that? Because most couples won't even try. So your first success is in the attempt.
Well, and we know 61% have considered it, 14% have completed it. So getting it started and getting it going is the first step you need to take.
And I want to share, this month, the entire month of February, we're actually going to be answering some of those questions that came in about the sex challenge and going over some of the other obstacles and challenges on Instagram. So if you don't follow us already on Instagram, make sure that you check us out at One Extraordinary Marriage, because we're going to be tackling this to equip you and your spouse to be able to do this, right?
Yeah, love it.
You can. So the biggest obstacle to the one family, the biggest challenge, it all fell under the category of schedules and time.
Sure.
Right. His schedule, her schedule, having opposite schedules, being too busy, work travel, just all of this. We've got first responders who, are coming in at all different times. We've got people that, because of work, they're gone 4 or 5 days out of the week. Right. And, here's the thing, like that couple that I read the hug, you can make up all kinds of reasons why it won't work. There's actually a couple in the one family. They're both EMTs. They actually are only both ever in the house at the same time, only 10 days during the month. So think about it. Only 1/3 of the month they happen to be in the same place. And they got really creative when they decided it. They were very intentional about those days. They were intentional about, looking at their calendar and saying, okay, when can we make this happen?
Right.
Because we want to make it a priority. And guys, we're all busy, right? There is not a single one of you listening to this show that doesn't have something else popping up on your calendar. You're probably doing something else while you're listening to the show. But I want to ask you, right? And this is a question that somebody asked me the first time they heard us talk about the 7 days of sex challenge, when they're like, well, what about the laundry? And what about, the dishes? And what about all the stuff you have to do? And my response then is the same thing I'm about to tell you now. All of the stuff that you have on your calendar will be there tomorrow. It will be. It absolutely will be. I said, but I have no guarantees that Tony will be there tomorrow.
And we just, looking at Facebook, we were at a conference some years back for firefighters. And we just saw that the husband, he passed away. Heart attack, probably, late 40s, something of that nature. And I was just like, wow. You know what I mean? It hits you because you go, wow, I have all this stuff going on in my life. And here's a healthy man, just loved his family, loved his community, and he's now gone. And hey, I don't wish that upon any of us. And yet these things do happen. And so our busyness can sometimes rob us of the amazing things that we could be doing in our marriage. And so switching our minds and our brains to go, we can't to we can is a huge first step. And then making your schedule work.
And for some of you, for a week, we're talking 7 days, for a week, you're going to need to say no to a few things. And they may be good things. I'm not telling you got to just cut out the junk. There may be some good things that you need to say no to. It's not forever. It's for 1 week. 1 week. In episode 462, we talked about get out of your head and into your bed.
And for any of you who've listened to it or you haven't listened to it, I would say go listen to that one again, because one of the biggest things that you can do to make sure that you are going to be successful during that 7 days of sex challenge is you got to get a bunch of stuff out of your head quick. You know what I mean? Elisa was saying, hey, the laundry will be there. I know some of us are like, oh, that needs to be cleaned or this or that. Sometimes you got to just get that out of your head. Make love. Enjoy each other. And if you want to cuddle or do whatever you want afterwards, go for it. And then maybe you pop up out of bed and you clean it up afterwards. We've done that. I mean, you make adjustments. Maybe you're going to just have sex in the shower during the middle of the day or in the morning. Hey, get it started out right. And then that way you're just already moving.
Well, and that goes into the next one, which is that, the second biggest challenge is people being tired, feeling exhausted, having low energy, being fatigued. And we get it. We were just talking about those schedules and how busy they are and how we're running and everybody's running and all this kind of stuff. Our kids were 2 and 5, and the youngest one was not sleeping during the night because she was dealing with tonsil and adenoid stuff. So,
and don't forget, we've also had sex challenges every year. For the last 9 years, we're going to be doing our 10th. So we've done this enough. And a number of times things have come up. One of us not feeling 100%, schedules, things changing. So we've done this enough times to know that, hey, tiredness, exhaustion, fatigue, those happen. And yet what can you do? I would even say this, if it's on your mind and this is something you're dealing with, why not take the next 90 days and look at that. Why are you so fatigued? Why do you have low energy? Is it your food intake? Is it you need to start a fitness regime? Is it something, just one thing that you know that you could do that could change your life? I'll tell you something that I've changed that's honestly changed my life just even right now is I stopped going to Starbucks. I love my double shots. Love my Starbucks double shot. Give me 2 pumps of classic. We're good to go. But guess what? I just said, I'm done. Enough's enough. And lo and behold, I've lost some weight. And I have my energy back. One thing. That's all and believe me, I still have some cravings at time. I wanted to go there this morning, actually. But I just said, you know what? I'm not going to do that because I know it's going to impact my energy and my level of awareness, I would say.
And can I just say, for all of you that think that sex is only a nighttime activity, it's not. If you're feeling super fatigued.
Yesterday was in the shower.
In the middle of the day. Early evening. I'm like, I had to think what time of day it was. But sex is not just a nighttime activity.
Yes.
Right? So, choose those other times. Choose nap time. Choose in the morning. Choose, when the kids are watching afternoon cartoons. Think through the other times of the day. Right? Because if you're feeling fatigued because you're trying to do it at 10:30 at night or 11 or 11:30, then you're always going to just wear yourself out.
No. It's so true. It's like, I just remember when we did the 60 days and have done some of the 7 days, honestly, I remember, you want to talk about emotional intimacy. I remember just Elisa talking. And I was cool because I was like, I want to hear it. I mean, we were just connecting at such a level that we hadn't in years that I was just soaking it in. But I remember a couple times just going, hey, babe, it's 11:50. And if we don't get moving, we are going to miss today. And you know what? It was worth it. I remember just being exhausted and tired, and yet it was so well worth it. I will say, usually when it was late at night like that, I am not ejaculating. I mean, for us, we were cool with penetration. There was some foreplay, and yet we knew that, hey, if she didn't orgasm or I didn't ejaculate, we still considered that a completed day.
And we've got the last 2 challenges that we want to share with you guys, the challenge to the challenge. But before we do that, we want to thank this week's sponsor, which is the Position of the Month Club. And we want to do a huge shout out to all of our fabulous partners the club.
Yes.
These are people who have seen firsthand the power of investing in their marriages and want to help spread One Extraordinary Marriage and all of the resources to more couples. And, it's great because when you become a Position of the Month Club partner, you're going to receive the Position Post monthly. And, this is really, it's a magazine style publication, right? It's going to get delivered to your inbox full of resources, articles, and member-only information. And, it's not just about the sexual intimacy. We actually help you build your emotional and recreational intimacy as well. And, you can learn more about it today and how you can join and get access to all this partner-only resources at positionofthemonthclub.com. And again, thank you to all of you that have already made that decision to partner with us and, not just make the investment in your marriage, but impact your community and those around the world. And so number 3, going into the last two here as challenges are, all things wrapped up under desire, right? And we heard things like, he's low desire, she's low desire, we're both low desire. How do I get my spouse on board when my spouse doesn't even want to, have sex? How do we stay interested for a whole week, right? And, I hope you heard that I did say he's low desire and she's low desire, because it impacts
Both
almost
sides.
every marriage. Right? There are these desire differences. It's in our marriage. I'm the low desire spouse. I get it. And that was part of the reason when Tony first suggested a sex challenge. I'm like, you are crazy. 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 We're maybe once a month and you want me to do what? But it actually created as the low desire spouse, it made it very clear. I knew what the expectations were. Yeah. Right. And so it really becomes this opportunity to start talking about what can we do again for 7 days.
And I think that's really, you hit on it. And I never really realized this. For you as a low desire spouse, it was setting up the expectation of what our sexual intimacy was going to look like. Right. And the 11 years prior to doing the first one, we had never discussed that at all. So you saying that really makes me realize how important it is for us to communicate those expectations. Because if not, we're sitting out here in la la land wondering, well, she's low desire or he's low desire. Well, what's the expectation that we have upon one another? And that's where, having done the challenges and moving into the intimacy lifestyle, we've set all that up. So both of us are on the same page. High desire spouse myself, low desire spouse Elisa, but we came together in agreement and we go, this is what we want and this is what we desire for our sexual intimacy in our marriage. What it looks for you guys is going to be probably different, because as we've said before, God has made us all uniquely special. And so you're not another Tony and Elisa, you're you and you. Those are who you guys are. And now it's blending that, bringing it together.
And if you're, another point here too, if you're the low desire spouse, you actually get more time to prepare yourself because you know what's coming, right? Instead of having okay, is he going to make a move? Is she going to make a move? Like we just know. Right. And whatever you have to do to get yourself ready, whether it's lubricants, whether it's, setting up the room to be romantic, whatever it is, wearing lingerie, and so you can get on board. And I would encourage you, if you are the low desire spouse, if you're the one that's like, I don't think we need this, if you're the one that, whatever, suspend all of that for 7 days. Go into this wholeheartedly for 7 days. And if you're not doing it for yourself, do it for your spouse. Because if they've asked you, this is something that they feel is important. And one of the biggest gifts that we can do for our spouses is to honor and explore what they think is important, right? Not having it be all about us and I can't do this and I don't want to do this. And, so much of that is mindset.
Yep. It's huge.
And so you've really got to look at what your mindset is around this topic of intimacy.
Yeah. And we have coming up this month, the Intimacy Mindset Workshop. And we'd love for you guys to check it out and join us with that. You can learn more about it at oneextraordinarymarriage.com/intimacy mindset.
And I would guess it probably comes as no surprise that the fourth biggest challenge, and a lot of you have them at home, is...
They're usually like 2, 3, 4 feet tall. Or at the younger ages, at our age, 6'2".
So it's kids.
Yeah.
Right.
And even at the older age, we're going to talk about it from the youngers to the olders, because there's a transition that we're all dealing with when we got kids.
Right. Because it doesn't matter if you have an infant that's nursing or if you have, that teenager that you're like, okay, when are they walking through the door? Right. Your sexual intimacy is impacted by those people. Somebody actually called them, one of the comments we had was those little dictators in the house, which made me chuckle. But having kids requires you to be creative about your sexual intimacy.
At all stages of life.
It goes, without saying that the older ones can hear you. And so some of you are like wrapping your head around, how do we have sex with that? And the babies, wake up at all kinds of weird times. And so, you may actually have to hire a babysitter to get your kids out of the house so that you can be in the house having sex, right? You may have to let them watch TV. For those of you that, you're kind of like, oh, we don't let our kids watch TV. I'm telling you, 20 minutes of whatever their favorite cartoon is so that the two of you can go have some connection, mommy, daddy time. best 20 minutes of TV. Don't do it all the time, but like use that to your advantage.
I would even say if they're in school, use that time to your advantage.
If you can make that work.
If you can make it work, if you have family around, if you have family, in your community that you can drop them off, say to grandma and grandpa's or something, things of that nature, make sure you take advantage of those.
And lock your door.
Yep.
Like, can we be real practical here? If you're worried about your kids walking in on you, or you're like, oh, I remember when I walked in on my parents, lock your door, right? It's 7 days. The kids will survive if mommy and daddy's bedroom door is locked for 7 days in a row. I'm just telling you, it'll be okay. And around this whole idea of kids, can we please not use our kids as an excuse for why we can't do a sex challenge? Can we, or for why we can't even be sexually intimate with our spouses? Here's the thing. You had sex to make them, right? That's how you got them. Sex was involved. It needs to be a factor in your marriage to keep your marriage moving forward. Stop using your kids as an excuse for why you and your spouse can't be more connected.
Yeah.
Like, I feel so strongly about this one because we're raising up a generation of kids that don't know that it's important that parents actually have time to themselves and make sexual intimacy a priority.
Yeah. And here's a couple other tips I just want to throw out there for you guys with kids. Sound and sleep machine. Grab one. I'll put a link here in the show notes for you guys. It's a sound machine that Elise and I love, and it changes with the amount of noise in the room. So as the levels go up, the actual machine makes the noise itself goes up. It increases in volume. So what it's doing is it's going to hide some of those noises that, hey, as a parent myself, you're sort of like, are the kids hearing that? Are they not? One of our kids loves having a fan in their room, so that adds another noise factor into that room. Another kid's a little farther away, so that helps. Again, Elisa said the shower time, great. Water's running, things of that nature. Think about also, and again, locking the door, key. Think of ways that you can help yourself be in the moment, whatever that may be, and get yourself there, because most likely you do have kids and you're going to have them for some years to come as well. If they're younger. For us, we're on the backside of it, and yet we still have them. And we're dealing with things that are different than youngers. When Elisa said, one of them's out, is he going to walk in? What time is he coming home? What time does she need to be picked up from friends and things of that nature? And so working around them is just one of those things that we do.
And at the end of the day, we did not know when we did our first sex challenge what was going to shift in our marriage. But here's the thing. We haven't been doing it the last 10 years because it doesn't work, right? Every year it provides a reset for the connection between the two of us. It provides that opportunity to say, you know what? You are my priority. And I'm willing to clear the calendar. I'm willing to say no to stuff. I'm willing to say yes to you because this relationship is the relationship that matters more than anything else. So, think about this, right? Share this show with your spouse, right? This may be the easiest way to bridge that conversation. Pick up the 7 Days of Sex Challenge book. Right? It's not only is there something to do every day, but there's all kinds of, we build out all kinds of variations and different suggestions. I mean, we're actually going to start a community-wide challenge on Valentine's Day. Right? So if you're thinking this through and you're like, that might be an awesome Valentine's Day present, I'm telling you, the one family, it's going to be happening all over the world. So again, make sure to follow us on Instagram because that's where we're going to be posting, daily questions and comments and all that kind of stuff, and really giving you a lot of encouragement around it. But, not every challenge has had fireworks every single day. But I will tell you that every time we've done a challenge, our marriage has walked away strengthened. And that's what we desire for each of you.
Yeah. All right, you guys. This was fun. This was packed. And it's something that Elise and I love talking to you about, because we see the breakthrough that happens when you do start one, and when you go through it, and then when you complete it. Even those of you who've written us and told us, hey, it didn't work this time, but then you come back and you go, you know what, we did it again and we did it. There is such breakthrough that happens in a marriage when you are able to sexually be one with each other, emotionally be one with each other for this 1 week time. We're blessed. We're excited to see the blessing upon your life when you go through your sex challenge. So go after it. Join us. We'd love to have you there with us with this one coming up here in February. We love you guys. Have a great week, and we'll catch you next week. Love you guys.